My name is Henk. I work at KWS SE as a digital enterprise architect, and I've been doing so for 3 years. And before that, I was working in the breeding department as a product owner for breeding software.
Hi, I'm Hayden. I work as a customer success manager here at LeanIX. Before that, I worked as a consultant, and I've been with the company for about a year now. Hank, maybe if you just tell me a little bit about KWS and what y'all do.
Sure. KWS is a breeding company for seeds like sugar beet, maize, cereals. And it's pretty old, so it's about 160 years old already and originated in Eastern Germany. And we operate worldwide in over 70 countries with over 5,500 employees nowadays. And we are kind of a hidden champion because most people don't know the company name, although most people use our products as sugar in coffee, barley, and beer comes from us, and a lot of animals are fed with our products. So, well, that's okay. What I'm doing there is I'm the digital enterprise architect at KWS. And my task is to keep an eye on the software landscape or the application landscape, and also to help people find new software. That's basically it.
Great. So perhaps you could just tell me a little bit about your background, how you ended up at KWS, and just also, how you got to the point of where you're at right now. I'm sure it was a long journey, both academically and professionally, to get there.
Yeah, that's a fun story because I originally started out being a botanist, and I did IT as secondary classes in university. And I started out my journey, if you say so, about 15 years ago at KWS as a trainee in the breeding projects for maize. And I was product ownering a breeding software, so a breeding database, and worked myself through the jobs there. And at some point, 3 years ago, I decided I wanted to do something different. And there was a cool position open in IT as a digital enterprise architect that was paired with being part of our digital innovation accelerator. So I thought I could make use of my knowledge of the company and my creative side all at once. So I applied for it and I got it.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting insight, right? Because you're somebody who understands the fundamentals of the business, right? The in and out of what you guys do on a day-to-day basis, but then also the IT side of things, right? So I think what's interesting is that you're uniquely positioned to understand business needs from an IT standpoint, and then also discuss how all that stuff how it looks like and comes together. I'm sure it's easier said than done, but just maybe if you could talk about a little bit what you do on a day-to-day basis as a digital enterprise architect.
Okay.
At AWS.
Yeah, as you mentioned, part of it is translating between needs from R&D, breeding, business sides towards the IT side, and also putting the right people together to say, hey, you have the same needs as somebody else, or you might have the same needs as somebody else, and bring all necessary people at the same table, to the same table. And another point is really tracking down applications with my colleagues from IT, finding out who's using them, what they are doing with them, finding out which kind of data is buried in the applications, if somebody else might need it, to make clear what we have in our systems, and also helping to break down some data silos and decision silos. Because historically we have been segmented into our big crops. So it doesn't make any sense for sugar beet breeder or for sugar beet department to get data from a maize department because it's a totally different crop. However, nowadays it makes sense to have a look at the software if they can be used together, and it also makes sense to look at the data because weather data is the same on the field. It doesn't matter what you grow in the field.
Yeah, I think you touched on a couple of really interesting points, and so maybe I can extract from that is
Yeah,
that
sure.
it's not just, and that's I think what a lot of people, or at least in my experience, get a little not confused on, but just that enterprise architecture, sort of the field in which we operate, is definitely a not only a technical business but also a people business, right? Translating things between different things, and also breaking down not only technological barriers but also organizational barriers. You mentioned it's not just about ensuring that you're able to share or integrate whether information across all sort of large reading groups, but also that those people are free, or have or have a lower barrier to entry when it comes to collaboration, and also to achieve greater transparency, which I think is really quite interesting and unique.
Yes. Um, I chose to make the job more a communicative job. So
Mhm,
as an enterprise architect, I think you have two choices. You
mhm,
can either be the more bookish type,
mhm,
where you set up rules and
mhm,
people have to follow them, which
mhm,
works in a certain type of companies.
mhm,
Or you can be more the communicative type,
mhm,
where you bring people together and make enterprise architecture management a team approach for the whole
mhm,
company. And that's what I chose to do, which I think also fits much better to KWS, because
mhm.
breeding, well, is very close to farming, and farming is definitely a team enterprise.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something which the sort of the domain is still very much in a transition, right? Getting away from getting bogged down a little bit into, at times overly academic discussions, and moving towards not only being collaborative but also fundamentally value oriented, and also saying that everybody in an organization, especially an organization with such a high amount of human capital as KWS, there's a lot of scientists that work there, obviously. Um, Empower them to participate in this, and to really, looking beyond enterprise architecture, be an active part of digital transformation, and when where
Yeah.
that goes, and to how organizations can leverage these technology solution, whether they be bought or made or whatever, to transform the business, or improve the business in certain areas. And so, yeah, I find it fascinating. It's really a modern approach to, at least in my opinion, how where the future is going in that regard.
Yeah, I figured out that it is much easier to work in this field when I can prove and show some value for
Hmm.
each department. If I would just come along and tell people what to do,
Hmm.
well, it would be difficult for them to follow, because
Hmm.
they don't know why they should do a certain thing. Then why should they do this?
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. And that's something which I think the we touch a lot on, during our discussions. But so, proving business value not only for CIOs, but CFOs, and just also people, across the board in the organization, that they can get something from it. And maybe people that aren't exactly familiar with enterprise architecture come out of of IT, but to, demonstrate value, like I mentioned, just across the whole organization, to get people to, I mean, as corny as it sounds, to get excited about it, right? And to see the value that you can that one can get out of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, honestly, they have to be excited about the whole thing,
Mhm.
because, well, if I look at my stakeholders or customers, as you said, yeah, CIO is on top of the list.
Mhm.
The FO is also very high on the list.
Mhm.
And because well, they look at the whole architecture from a
Mhm.
very high level of
Mhm.
abstraction. They simply want to know, okay, what are the processes? What are our business capabilities? Where
Mhm.
are they supported with certain
Mhm.
software or not?
Mhm.
And that's the one side. And then if we go a bit deeper into more details, then I have, for example, one colleague who simply documents all his interfaces in a certain area of the landscape with LeanIX.
Mhm.
And he's totally happy with it, because he can go down to all the details he needs.
Mhm.
And all that I need from him is, yes, these software applications, they talk to each other and transfer this type of data. So there's a win-win situation. This is what I like to implement for as many departments as possible.
Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting point that you touched on, especially because there's something for everyone, right? It gives you the flexibility to provide what people are looking for and the value they want to take out of it, right? Is that the CFO wants the high level, but then you have the ability to have a colleague who wants a central repository, for lack of a better term, of all the interfaces and which applications are communicating to which other applications, what's being sent back and forth, the information that they're exchanging, but and that can exist within the same solution or provider. And that's, I think, what's interesting. And then also that it should be simple, right? Obviously, I think a lot of where a lot of enterprise software struggles is in that the UX and UI can be unfriendly to people who don't have a lot of experience with such applications or software. And so it becomes difficult to circle back on the people side of things. You can really turn people off very quickly, and then they're not interested really in using the product further. And so I think that's something which goes hand in hand with
Yeah, I mean, I was specifically looking for a software that was easy and simple to use, because, well, the whole field is complex enough, and I don't want to overburden or burden my colleagues with, oh gosh, I have to use another software. I mean, for some people it's easy. It's kind of I use the software. I don't care how complex it is. But as you said, I want to have a very, very low entrance barrier where I can simply say, yes, you enter your stuff here. That's fine. If I think you need to update it, I just ping you via the software. The software pings you every couple of weeks or months. And this is okay. I mean, yes, sure, you can have endless functionalities added. Currently, I don't need them.
Yeah. And I think that's what's important in some ways is prioritizing what you do need, right? And this and saying, hey, you know what? It's nice to have, but if we're talking about covering edge use cases that will come up, 2% of the time, let's focus on where in sort of a utilitarian manner where I can generate not only the most value, but make it as easy to use for the most amount of people possible. And so I think that's something which, that we at LeanIX excelled, or it's really built into our DNA in the way that we approach the product. Because as you mentioned, right, it can be very difficult and intangible for some people who don't come from this world, and to sort of shift the paradigms towards a collaborative environment is really quite I would say quite useful, but more than that. And so maybe you could just walk me through your concrete use cases. What have you been sort of working? What have we worked on together, or you with your colleagues over the past couple of months? And also, where are we going afterwards once we've checked those boxes? I mean, obviously it's continuous, but
It is definitely continuous. So my first goal is to have a single source of truth for, I would say, the most important applications. I decided against tracking all applications in the system because I want to start with the applications that are heavily used, that are business critical, where we need to monitor the functionality in order to ensure that everything is running. And once we have this done, then we can start talking about data, like which data is where, do we have siloed data? If we have, what can we do against it? Or maybe it's totally okay to have data in a certain place and non-accessible from outside. I'm thinking about HR data, where I would say, yes, it's nice to have it siloed.
Yes, indeed.
I'm talking about weather data or field boundaries. I would say, well, they should be available across the company. They're not public, but inside the company, it should be okay. And then what I also want to achieve, just, I would say, not as a side note, but along the road, is to encourage deeper cooperation between the departments. Just to get an eye for, hey, I'm using this and I'm doing that. I can talk to other people
Mhm.
to minimize the effort we have,
Mhm.
which is something that I do not do alone. This is something that we all have in our genes in the company,
Mhm.
and we all do. And so this is the part that I can do there.
Mhm.
And well, and the rest is the next things is I have to check it out here. Yeah, making the information about the landscape available
Mhm.
to as many people as possible. Basically, from my point of view, everybody should be able to see it if
Mhm.
he or she is interested in doing so.
Mhm.
Another thing is also post mergers,
Mhm.
for example, which is also a cool use case, which I love because yes, sometimes companies buy other companies. Just read it yesterday in the news that you did something like that.
Yes, exactly.
And pardon? Yeah. And this also happens in our field. And then you have also always the question, okay, which software do you use? Which software do we use? Or the
Mhm.
old company uses? And then you have to map it out, or it helps to map
Mhm.
it out and see, okay, this process is tied to that software in your case, and you have this business capability. And then it helps to just or it supports decisions on
Mhm.
C-level. For
Mhm.
example, to say, okay, we are both using Microsoft Teams. Good,
Mhm.
let's put this together.
Mhm.
Or you have a special software here. Let's see, okay, it's really tied or suited to your special needs.
Mhm.
So, okay, we keep it. And then I can flag it in LeanIX to say, okay, it's accepted this way. We have two softwares for the same or for a similar process.
Mhm.
Just leave a note and say it's accepted.
Mhm. Yeah.
Don't worry about it again. And these are the first things I'm working on.
Mhm.
Next to what I already mentioned, documenting interfaces
Mhm.
and documenting processes. To be honest, I'm not documenting any processes. That's the colleagues from the process excellence team, which
Mhm.
they do in Signavio, and there's a handy Signavio integration in LeanIX. So we work on the basis that I just pull the processes out of Signavio,
Mhm.
and in return, the colleagues will get a list of IT components or
Mhm.
applications. On the LeanIX side, it's called applications. In Signavio, it's called IT components,
Mhm.
so that we both can work with it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's and what I really think is great is that you touched on a lot of the collaborative nature, but then also the fact that there's the ability to, oftentimes when you're talking about a decision to acquire a company or things like that, there's a lot of due diligence that gets involved in and all, and the corporate development department gets very excited about it. But a lot of the work comes after you've bought the company, right? And not
Yeah,
only when it comes to integrating the departments, but also the IT landscape, as you mentioned, and also making those critical decisions about assigning, even if it's qualitative, value to certain things, and allowing people to sort of assist people in making decisions or asking the right questions. I think is that you're able to take a look at an IT landscape and say, hey, great, they also use Microsoft Office, they have this and this and this. Perfect. We'll merge the licenses together. Of course, that's easier said than done, but at least you get the conversation started. And then, like you said, there's probably, especially in your realm or industry, there's a lot of companies that have very specific software tailored to their needs, which at least for the time being will be sort of, as you mentioned, accepted, and
yeah,
to see where that develops down the line is another question. But at least from the get go, you're able to really speed up merging two companies together as the expression of process, which is easier said than done.
it
And,
is
and
absolutely. It is a very complex process, as I've learned.
yeah.
However, what I do is I support information. I
Mhm.
support a single source of truth
Mhm.
in this process and facts. And then at some point, I mean, I'm not doing C-level decisions. That's for C-level to do. However, that's the important thing to
Mhm.
give this level a basis to decide upon.
Mhm.
Some projection of, okay, what happens if? These are all things that can be done with LeanIX and are tied to the enterprise architecture. And then lower down, of course, there are simple decisions that are made at my level where I can say, I'm sorry, you're not going to use this software because you're the only one. And there's another software that does the same trick.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think it's it's about also making decisions, as you mentioned, based on fact, but I would even say making them in some manner data driven, or at least grounded in fact and in information, right? Is that, especially in the age that we live in, it's important to, when you're making decisions, especially big decisions, C-level decisions, you want to have as much information as possible, and also have the security knowing that the information is good, that the data quality is high. Obviously, there's always some sort of ambiguity when it comes to things. There's a whole tons of variables that are out there which are difficult to quantify, but the things that we can quantify, we should quantify, and that also empowers people to make quicker decisions, and ultimately, I would also say, better decisions, right? Because we're in a day and age where being fast and right is important. I mean, not that being fast and right is always good, but I think it's more critical than ever. And I think that it's the points that you touched on definitely reflect that sort of intention, and also the ability of LeanIX also to support that in your day-to-day work, and also sort of I imagine some strategic questions which get thrown across you over the course of a couple days or something like that.
And then there's some really interesting stuff.
Yeah. Maybe you could just sort of touch on a little bit the relations you had to customer success, and sort of what your understanding of customer success was before LeanIX, especially, it's a term in Europe that perhaps not a lot of people are so familiar with. And just maybe touch on that. That would be really interesting to hear.
It is really an interesting question. Normally in Europe, before, my experience was more like, yes, we do an onboarding, and then you get a checklist of things that a new software should be able to do, and that I would like to do, or the customer would like to do with the software. And then, well, once this is achieved, it's fine, and you get a plan, and you're walked through the plan, and there you go, which is also pretty cool because you always know where you want to go. With LeanIX, I have to admit it's a bit different. It's more flexible. So I always have the feeling it's more like we both meet and discuss what I want to do. And then either you support it. I mean, you always support it. Don't get me wrong. Either you say, yeah, Henk, you can do it this way, or I connect you to a specialist here, or have a look at this doku. Or you ask a polite question about, are you really sure you want to do this right now? Maybe you need to collect some data points before you embark on this journey, which is something I really like very much, because the whole field is very new. And it's not only new for me. Okay, after 3 years, it's not really new any longer, but it's also new for the company. So I'm the first enterprise architect we ever had. And so we do it by touch and feel. So we have an idea, what can we do with LeanIX? What can we do with enterprise architecture? And then we try it out, and we see if it works, or how does it work? Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? So under these circumstances, I really like and appreciate the way you do the customer success in a very individual way. So I bet no customer success is identical to another one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also our goal, is to sort of move away from just trying to make things customer centric, but also tailored to the individual needs, and also to act as a strategic advisor or sparring partner about asking the right questions, even at times they may be a bit pointed and not uncomfortable. That's perhaps an exaggeration, but something along those lines, because at the end of the day, I want to ensure also not only regarding LeanIX, but also in your work or enterprise architecture at KWS, that you're getting the most value out of it, and things are value oriented in the sense that, okay, and this is sort of the question which may perhaps sound a little dumb or facetious, but right, but like, what's the business value? Are there going to be cost savings? Are you going to have are there going to be transparency that's going to get out? Are we going to break down information silos? What are we getting out of this? And I think that it's important to move away from getting too academic about things, because it can turn people off and I think that's really what we strive to do here at LeanIX within customer success management, and to go above and beyond just sort of the traditional software sort of customer facing role or client facing role in Europe when it comes to onboarding customers and doing all that stuff. But really, empowering is perhaps a buzzword, but I really do believe that that's something which we really strive to do, to provide you with not only the information, the people that you need to speak with to make good decisions, but to just, be a sounding board for anything like that. So
for me, that fits very well because, it's pretty difficult to talk to other. No, it's not difficult to talk to other enterprise architects, because there is a nice community out there. But sometimes you definitely need a sparring partner just to bounce stupid ideas off, or good ideas, whatever.
Oh, I mean, none of your ideas are stupid. They all ask the right questions, right? And I think the most important thing is to ask questions, right, and just throw things off the wall. And that's also ultimately why I'm here, or my fellow customer success managers are here to throw ideas off the wall and to see what sticks and what also makes sense. And that doesn't hold true for every customer.
Yeah.
I think that too, what really I value, or at least, over the time that we've sort of, put our collective brains together when it comes to tackling this problem, is, the openness and transparency about the discussion that we have, and just being very frank about, what do we want to achieve, and also what do we do exceptionally well, and areas which we need to improve. I think that it's a cornerstone to be extremely transparent and open about where we are, what we do well, and what we're looking on improving, and what comes now in the future, or areas which we can still improve. Because ultimately, that's something which I also, my personal opinion, am completely convinced of, that software as a service and customer-centric companies offer the ability to really be customer first, and to really develop in a manner which reflects the demands and the wishes of the market. So, Hank, maybe you can just tell me a little bit what you like about LeanIX, or some of the features, or just the general vibe of the product. That would be great.
Okay, with pleasure. Basically, it starts with the simplicity of the use. So it's a really clean and well-designed user interface. And it's easily understandable. So all the training is about what do we want to put in there and how. It's only 5 minutes about how to use LeanIX. Then I'm very fond of some of your reports, like the application landscape, the interface circle map. That's really cool. And what I'm absolutely looking forward to is the Power BI integration, because with this, I will be able to really do tailored reports for C-level, where I can put a dashboard on the screen of my boss and say, look, use it. Here's your personal dashboard, just as you like it. Have fun. So that's the big things, I would say, including, of course, the integration with Signavio, we already talked about, which is really helpful to connect these two worlds. And well, that's it. Customization, yeah. I mean, it's a kind of a joke, but I could immediately set it to KWS colors and added the KWS logo, and that was cool. So people immediately they open it and they say, "Wow, that's a KWS software." And no, but thanks for liking it. And so
Yeah, and those are really the central factors that we try and incorporate when we're looking at,
yeah,
new features that just, or in general, the look and the feel of the product is that, again, collaborative, easy to use,
yeah,
and then also value business first for, disparate stakeholders, which I
yeah,
think is where we excel. Uh,
definitely.
yeah, so Hank, it would be really interesting also for you to just sort of shed some light on where are we going next? What are we trying to achieve in the next couple of months? And then, looking long term, what are the goals that that you and I are striving for going forward?
Um, the next big thing we are going to look into is business capabilities. So I really want to go cracking on that to give support for strategical decisions and for development decisions in certain departments.
Mhm.
And then it's a lot of groundwork to do to really um, include all the appropriate applications into the system to really say, okay, you're an important application. You go into LeanIX. You are a rarely used one user only application. Well, please stay out of LeanIX to really have an overview of all the most important things.